Hey guys, EliteChris35 here. Hope you enjoyed that song, and if you did, give the video a like. Also, download the song. Link in the description. If you haven't already, subscribe to Royal Tracks. If you're feeling super nice, help me out and head over to my channel and watch a couple of my gaming vids.
All right, it's Mark, and it's time to do another live show. Today is July 8th, 2015, and I have a lot of stuff lined up for today. Well, not actually a lot of stuff, but some interesting new things. But first, we're going to start. Let me make this big first. We're going to watch Zombie Pirate Tales, and this is the first episode that I completed today. And it took many years to make because basically my budget was very small, and real life kind of got in the way. But basically in between my jobs, I was actually working on it, and it took a very long time. Like I said, I should have gotten it done in like a year if I had a crew of people, but didn't work out that way. But anyways, here it is.
Ahoy there, Ruble! We need more slack on the aft mizzen rope. We're losing speed. Remove the rope at once.
Yeah, right away, sir. Now what the heck is a mizzen rope? Now who put that there? They must be crazy. How bad is this rope? I know what I'm doing. Whoa! What the? Oh. This must be the rope. What the?
Good job, Ruble. We're back on course.
All right, so there it is, and it took a lot of work to make that, and also a lot of people helped as well, either donations or actually making things for the film, or helping with the sets, or encouragement, and just a lot of people really were involved. It wasn't just me, so I can't take all the credit. But anyway, thanks for everybody who helped out, especially the donators who gave a lot of their hard-earned money towards the project early on. And anyways, so I don't want to really talk too much about that because I'm going to be making a video about it, sort of to recap everything that took place during the creation of the film. And all right, so thanks, guys. Thank you, Hebert, for your nice words, and you also, Claymara. Claymara is asking, am I planning on more episodes? And after I did the last shot today, I thought about it, and I would like to. I really would. The main thing that's stopping me from making more is basically I don't have a budget for it. So I don't know, what I should do. Should I make like just short, simple films, or keep on track with Zombie Pirate Tales? Because it's just really it's a complicated thing to do alone at that kind of quality. And not that it's great quality, but for me it takes a lot of effort to do, to make it look as nice as I can. So I'm kind of thinking that I might do something else, something that is a little more rough and simple, so I could get more done. But I don't really know yet. I might even work on making animations for the monthly challenges in the future, just because the challenge topics are simple and they don't have to be long and perfect. Because I was kind of being a perfectionist with Zombie Pirate Tales, and it kind of works against you in some ways. At least in terms of getting volume of animation done. So I don't really know. I have to really think about it hard. And what I do know is I'm gonna clean out the garage now, because it's been kind of a the ship takes up a ton of space, and I have a lot of boxes in the garage, and I need to make more space if I'm gonna either work more on Zombie Pirate Tales or work on something else. So either way, it'll be a while before I do anything as big as this episode again, but we'll see. I'm not really sure. Now, if I had like I say, like a big budget, and at least a few people to work on it with me and do it, every single day, I can get a lot of films done. For sure, especially if like a studio approached me or anything like that and said, hey, we'd like to help out and make more episodes, then definitely, I would love to, because especially with Ruble, I sort of fell in love with him as a character, and it was really fun to animate him, and I enjoy the process. But like I say, without money, it's really tough. Because I feel kind of guilty that it took so long to make. But it's not really that I'm making excuses either. I do sculptures for people, and I have my business and my family, so it takes a lot of time to make a film, and without money, it's just really tough to do. So anyways, I'm not really sure yet, but I will definitely consider it. So to move on, I want to talk a little bit about some strange new video. What should I call this? It's not video editing. It's not really a plugin for a video editor. It's something kind of unusual. Now, Google is known for trying to understand imagery, and in the process of trying to understand imagery in order to get their search engines to work well, some of their engineers came up with something which is by trying to mimic the human brain and how it works, and trying to see an image and figure out what it is. So, for example, if you're outside and you look up at the sky and you see the clouds, if you use your imagination, you can see different things in the clouds. So what the brain does is it looks at something and it puts it up against what it already knows. So if you see a cloud formation that looks like a horse, the first thing your brain will try to do is connect a horse image that you have already in your head with the shape of the cloud. Okay, so this is kind of what Google does with, or is trying to do with, their image searches in order to know if something is an outdoor scene, an indoor scene, or also things like, is something a cat? Is it a human person? Is it an airplane? So their team of engineers realize that the human brain does this really well, but when you try to use a computer, how do you encode a computer to do that? So they've mimicked a human brain with a neural network. And so where am I going with this? It sounds kind of weird, right? Well, this is something that this is an image of a guy, and this particular web page, you can upload an image to it and process an image through Google's what they call I believe it's called deep dreaming, and I don't know if that's actually correct, but it's a let me see here. So it's on GitHub. It's a free thing you can utilize, but how can I say that? Actually, I don't think this is the original place to find it. I think I messed up. But anyway, it involves a lot of coding and stuff, and also you need a server that can mimic the human brain, which you can't. I think you can also use on your computer too. But anyway, I don't really understand it completely. But from what I do understand is the software takes a picture like this, and it looks at the shapes, and it bases the shapes that it has in its system already and tries to line it up with the shapes it sees here. And this is the result. So after several layers of neural networks, the first network tries to figure out the general shape. The next one hones in on those shapes and sees, well, maybe this is a cat face, maybe it's a human face, and it will overlay the imagery onto the person. So we have like some dogs and things like this. There's eyeballs everywhere, and that's because the set of images that Google has inputted in its system are animals. So it tries to figure out what animals are in this picture, and it overlays those objects in its database with the picture. So you can see he's got this little microphone to the side, and it sees that microphone and thinks, well, that must be a dog head. So it's kind of strange, but this is the result. And I thought that some of you guys might find this interesting, because neural networks, utilizing a neural network to create video imagery is extremely unusual, and is as close to a hallucination of the human brain that you can get. So here's what it looks like. Somebody, they figured, well, that particular film is about taking drugs, and so we will mix taking drugs and Google's Deep Dream and come up with something very unusual and hallucinogenic. And so this is another video which I believe uses different imagery to base or to try to it's really hard to explain this, but the images that Google uses to do this are different. So I'm not sure if these are animals or what, but this is another example of what this neural network can do to videos. So it's looped, but if I pause it, each and every image is processed individually, and it actually flows. There's like a fluidity to it, which is interesting that it does that. And you would think that each image would be kind of random, but there's a lot of continuity to it. So it comes, the result is really strange. So I don't know if this is something that the future holds for video editing. Because if you think about mechanical operations where a car plant or something will use robots to take over human repetitive motions and things. So if somebody has to, constantly screw a screw into, the left side of a car 10,000 times a day on an assembly line, a robot will take over. And I'm kind of curious if neural networks will do something similar. When it comes to video editing, I don't really know, but I'm just kind of curious as to where this will head. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, really strange. And one more example to show you guys is this is kind of the same thing. Different images are used where the computer tries to figure out what it's looking at, and there's a constant zoom. So all the pixels that it sees, it again tries to see or figure out what is that. And I think it's overlaying alligators and other maybe even outdoor elements like buildings and things to this. But as it zooms in, it's recreating the images over and over and over again. And this is essentially a computer hallucinating, is what they say. And it's supposed to be mimicking the human brain, which is really bizarre. But I think Henry Selick would probably like this, because I know his films tend to line up with stuff like this, which is kind of like, what do you call it? Mixed media, I guess, is the word. So yeah, pretty strange. All right. So, anyways, if you guys are interested in that, let me see here. Google Deep Dream is what it's called. You can Google it. You can download files as well. So you can try to do this yourself if you're into computer programming, and come up with all these bizarre things. And it's not just animals. There's buildings. There's all kinds of stuff that you can mess with. Like I say, I don't know enough about it to really give a course on it, but check it out if you guys are interested. All right, so now for our feature presentation. Tony Cipriano is a sculptor who has made a ton of maquettes and full figures, and what else has he done? He's made a lot of superhero comic characters and cast them in resin for sale. So if you guys go to comic book stores and you see, Superman or Spider-Man or anything like that, I believe he's made pretty much every single superhero out there. And this is a video he's created on how he sculpts and all his techniques. And so if you guys are into sculpting, puppets and things like that, there's a lot of different techniques out there, a lot of different clays. There's always a ton of things to learn, and there's always new materials out there. So we're going to watch this. This is over 40 minutes long. So it's 8:20, which means I killed 20 minutes, which was my plan. Hopefully in an interesting way. And so we're going to watch this, and I'm going to take a seat back here and just kind of watch myself and see what I can absorb. So here we go. Hopefully the audio will work here. I don't think there's any sound yet. Okay, I hear sound now. Hopefully it's loud.
Hi, this is Tony Cipriano.
There we go.
Today we're going to be sculpting a bust of a werewolf. I'm showing you some pictures now of materials that we're going to be using to do the bust. All of this is pretty easy to find in hardware stores. Just basic power tools to build your armature. I'm going to be using some glass eyes for the demonstration. You don't really need those. You could use some ball bearings or glass beads that you could find at a craft store. The heat gun is a great tool to use with oil-based clay, as well as this little alcohol torch, which I get at a dental supply. Very inexpensive. This is the clay we're going to be using. It's called monster clay, appropriately enough. It's an oil-based clay. This is just some, I think it's pressboard or masonite that I got at Home Depot, and just cut it to size. These are plumbing fixtures, also from Lowe's or Home Depot, or any hardware store should have these. This is aluminum armature wire, which I put into the pipe and secured with epoxy putty, and you could pose it. I pulled some reference from the internet and pinned it up on my boards. I did a little concept sketch of what I want it to look like. There's the armature inside the bust, how it's gonna be inside the bust. These are just basic sculpting tools. I've used the same tools for 20 years. A rake, a loop, a spatula. Okay, let's get started. I've got a little time-lapse photography here. I'm just at this point squeezing some soft monster clay onto my armature. You could see the sketch in the background. I've posed the armature. I'm already trying to get a little bit of movement and gesture into the bust. Even with a bust, you can get movement. I don't normally do a bust that's just looking straight ahead. I always like to, hunch one shoulder up, or especially with a character like a werewolf or a monster. You want to get one shoulder up. You want to get the head tilted. You want to get the eyes looking off in one direction. Yeah, a bust doesn't have to be stiff and looking straight ahead every time. I try to get some gesture, even with a head and shoulders. You can see that I'm constantly turning the piece and constantly trying to keep the entire sculpture at the same level of finish. I'm not going into, the eyes or the ears and leaving everything else unattended. I'm trying to keep everything at the same level and just keep spinning it and keep changing my lighting and keep looking at it from different angles. At this early stage, I step back often, a few feet away. And you can see, even at this very, very early stage, you can see there's a little bit of gesture there. There's a little bit of attitude. The monster clay is really, really nice material. It's pretty hard right out of the tub. They give you a 5-pound tub. Pretty reasonably priced. It's good stuff. It's very, very nice to work with. It's not soft right out of the tub, but you could heat it with a heat gun or hair dryer. You can even put it in the oven for a little bit. You see, I'm taking a pointy tool and I'm drawing lines on the surface. What I'm doing there is to help me remember to keep the angles correctly. You see, I want one shoulder up higher, so I drew a line. And I want one eye a little higher than the other eye, so I drew a line. And that just helps me remember to make sure I don't lose that. I don't lose that gesture that I'm trying to achieve. Very loose, very loose. I love to work fast, and not this fast, obviously, but I love to work fast and loose. You see me twisting the head a little bit. Even at this point, I'm still tweaking the gesture a little bit. I really want that hunched feel, like he's looking over his shoulder, like somebody's chasing him. The villagers are chasing him or something like that. And you can see right there, you can see the lines that I drew in there. I just scribed some lines just to help me visualize my pose. Very loose, still very rough. And as you work, you lose those lines, but it's nothing to go back and just keep scribing them in. It's a very early stage. You're not going to destroy any detail. Something I see often with beginners, I did it myself when I was first starting out, is that they go right for the details. They go right for they don't keep the sculpture at the same level of finish. They will stop like at this point and just focus on the nose or the eyes and just start sculpting the eyes and leaving everything else rough. Especially with figures, I see it all the time with figures. People will go right for, they'll block out the figure, then they'll start sculpting the abdominals to a high finish, every detail in there, and meanwhile the arms are still wires, you know, and that's kind of a mistake. I don't try not to do that, because you could lose your proportions, you could lose your way that way. Try to keep spinning your sculpture and keep everything at the same level of finish or roughness in this case. Now this is a very important part of the process. What I mean by defining the planes of the face, I'm taking a spatula tool, a flat tool. It's actually got a serrated edge to it, like a rake. But right now I'm just using the flat edge to define the planes of the forehead. There's a pretty good shot you could see. And I'm raking in different directions, like the forehead. I'll go up and down in a vertical rake like that. And on the temple area, I'll rake horizontal, left to right. And you can see the sharp edges now that I'm trying to get. There's that little ridge underneath the eyes, the temples, the forehead. Now I'm working on the jawline. And this is really important. This when I was first starting out, I didn't do this, and sometimes, you know, the one of the eyes would drift from the front plane of the face off to the side plane of the face. So this helps a lot. If you define the planes, you're much more likely to keep all your features lined up correctly. And I'm going to show you a little trick in a minute with push pins that I like to use sometimes to also help with this. This is a wax tool. I think it's a wax tool. I've had it for about 20 years. It's just a really strong metal rake tool. And there you go. I'm scribing the lines back in to make sure I remember not to lose that gesture and that action line. Now I'm actually even drawing the line, defining the planes with a line to help me see it better. Now with a bust this scale, this is about roughly a third scale life size. I usually eyeball it. If I was doing a life size bust, I would probably take caliper measurements, careful measurements of my model, and apply those to my bust. But this something this size, I usually just try to eyeball the proportions. But it's a good tip to know anyway. I'm going to show you a little tip I picked up along the way. There's a little loop tool that I just use to gouge out the back of the sculpture. I like to do this little texture in the backs of my busts. It's a classical feel, like a woodcut or something that's carved out of stone. Here I'm just defining the shoulder line. And this is the fun part for me. All this is the good stuff. If you could do this, you're halfway home. You're more than halfway home, because everything else beyond this is just window dressing. It's just details and technique, and all that can be learned. This is something that took years to figure out. Gesture and pose, in my opinion, are the most important part of any sculpture. If you can look at a sculpture from across the room and it looks good, that's what makes a good sculpture to me. If you have a lot of little detail and intricate, skin pores and stuff like that, that's an added bonus. But this is what really makes a good sculpture, in my opinion, is correct anatomy and form and gesture and a pose. Now I put down the rake tool, and I'm kind of using my thumbs a little bit here to soften those planes. And I'm going to go back and forth. Here I'm taking a loop, a flat loop, and just refining the shapes, taking down those hard edges a little bit. Still no detail yet, still no, I'm not focusing on one spot and trying to, get a lot of detail in there. I'm just this is probably about an hour into the sculpture or more, and I'm still just refining the gesture and making sure everything is where I want it. I could still even tweak the pose if I want. I could still move the head around. That's the heat gun, which is a great tool. I use that or the small alcohol torch to heat the surface of the clay, because the clay will cool and become hard again. So when you heat the clay, it makes it a lot easier to use, to tool, I mean. You get a pretty good look at the planes in these shots. I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named Bridgman. He wrote a series of books. George Bridgman, I think his name is. And they're drawing books, but it's the same principle. He breaks the figure down into these blocky shapes, and it really helps you see. It really helps you see your anatomy and your forms and your pose. And you can soften it. You can always soften it, but it helps to begin this way. There's a shot of the rake tool. You could see that the directional lines, I rake in different directions to even accentuate those planes. Here's that little tip I was telling you about. I would do this on a life-size bust. I would push these pins into the clay, and using a calipers, I would take measurements from my model and then bring the measurements back onto my sculpture. But it's a good tip. I think it's helpful to learn it anyway. And considering that this is a werewolf and his whole head and face is going to be covered in hair, this is not going to help too much. If it was just a regular human face, this would help more. But all these measurements are going to probably be obliterated by hair in the end anyway. But you want a good solid understructure anyway. You don't want wonky proportions, even though you're going to have hair covering everything. There's the calipers, and I'm just making sure that the distance between the middle of the nose to the edge of the brow is the same distance on both sides. Now I'm going to start taking it a little bit further. I took some clay, just a blob on each side. There's the ears. And another blob, just squish it down. There's the collar, indicating the collar. Just add a little bead here, a little bead there. There's cheekbones, eyebrows, chin, jaw muscles. It's very important to get up out of your chair and step back about 10 feet or so and look at the sculpture from across the room. I do it all the time. And it's also very important to keep changing your lighting. Just move your lights, your overhead lights around, and keep spinning your sculpture around. If you don't have one, you can get a Lazy Susan or a little turntable. Very important. Okay, I think this is a good stopping point for as far as the anatomy of the head goes, because like I say, the whole thing is going to be covered in hair. So you don't want to go too crazy with the structure, the skull structure and all that. So right now I'm just taking little bits of clay, little tiny bits, but you'll notice I'm going in a directional way, the way hair would naturally grow. On the forehead, I'm putting it down and smushing it upward and back. Where the beard is, I put it down and smush it down and out. Just following a direction for the hair to grow. Now, these are just blobs, but it's all going to be blended later and tooled, into finer hair. But you want to have tufts. You want to have tufts of hair. You don't want it to be too fine. Well, maybe you do. It depends on what type of animal or creature you're sculpting. But with this guy, I want it to be a little bit, not messy, but matted. Not too perfectly combed. It's a werewolf. He's supposed to be a monster. So I don't want his hair to be, too slick. Again, this is the most fun part for me, personally. Some guys like the detailing part, the very end, when you're getting in there with a magnifying lens and working with a little tiny pointy tool. This is what really gets me excited about sculpture. The fast, roughing it in part. I'm trying to use some tufts of hair to help exaggerate the angry expression. And I'm going to start scooping out the mouth and the eye sockets. Everything is pretty much, at this point, it's pretty much self-explanatory. What I'm doing, it's really not much to talk about. So I'll just let you watch. Okay, here's a two-part epoxy. You mix these two parts equal parts until you got a uniform color. And what I'm going to do with this, you see my high-tech method of making teeth using a Dixie cup from one of my kids, from my kid's bathroom. I just sculpted a little pair of teeth, and once the epoxy cures, they're rock hard, and I could use my Dremel tool to grind some points. And I just want to see what it's going to be like, what it's going to look like. So I push them into the clay. The different color really helps. You know, the contrast of the brown clay and the whitish teeth. It's going to help me visualize what the final thing is going to look like. And the other benefit of doing the teeth in epoxy as opposed to just sculpting them with the monster clay is I'm going to be able to get a little bit of depth to the mouth. When I mold and cast this bust, I'm going to be able to pop the teeth out and cast those separately, and you'll still have that deep cavity of the mouth. If I didn't do that, I would have to fill in a lot of the mouth, or else it would cause the silicone rubber to be trapped inside that hole. So by doing the teeth in epoxy, I could pop them out, mold them separately, and have a nice open mouth cavity that the silicone could easily be removed from in my mold. You'll see what I mean later on. I'm gonna briefly touch upon mold making at the end of this video, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. I'm just starting to add a little clay here to build up his sport jacket and his tie. He's a well-dressed werewolf. That tie is just for placement. I'm going to show you another method of doing the tie later. Here's some glass eyes that I picked up. Again, I just pushed them into the clay just to see what it's going to look like. The contrast helps me see it much better. I'm going to pop those out and put round ball bearings in there later when I do the mold. But you could see, I want to see the eye direction. I've been saying this for a long time. The eye direction, especially on a bust, is a huge part of the pose. If I just put these eyes in and have the pupils looking straight out, it's going to look silly. It's going to look goofy. The eye, I want him looking back over his shoulder. So those pupils, I push them all the way into the corners. hair's starting to get a little bit more refined in those shots. Okay, here's what I'm talking about. If I put, see those eyes? If they look straight out, right, they don't have lids, so they look kind of goofy, but if those eyes are looking straight out, it's a whole different attitude. It's a whole different sculpture, in my opinion. But if you push them, like I'm doing right now, if you push them looking over his shoulder, that it kind of tells a story that, you know, maybe he's being chased by the angry villagers, or maybe he sees his next victim or something. Just staring straight ahead with a dead stare is kind of, you know, it flattens the sculpture out, in my opinion. So that's another reason I like to put the glass eyes in there. It helps me. It helps me with the pose. Now this is oil-based clay, so it's not permanent. I'm going to have to make a mold of it and cast a hard copy if I want to keep this sculpture. If I was using polymer clay or epoxy, I could leave those glass eyes in there and they just become part of the sculpture. But since I'm going to mold this anyway, those pupils are not going to show up in the castings. They're just going to be a smooth surface. So it doesn't make sense to use glass eyes on an oil-based clay sculpture. I'll pop them out and I'll use some round beads. Plus these glass eyes, for some reason, they're oval shaped and they're like a half sphere. So I want to use a full round bead to push in there, just like a real eyeball, and that's going to look really nice in the castings. And if you take a look, the whole sculpture is the jacket, the tie, the collar, the hair, everything is at the same level of looseness and roughness. I haven't really gone into any one specific area and finished it yet. It's all the same looseness. And I think I can't stress that enough. I think that's very important. I've seen guys do, working on a full figure, an 18-inch figure, and they do the head first. Completely done. Completely do the head. And then they try to do the body. And sometimes your proportions get lost that way. Keep everything at one level all the way through. And slowly, slowly clean up the whole piece at the same time. Just my opinion. Patience. It's patience. It's a matter of, self-control. Everybody wants to get right to the nitty-gritty and get right to the cool parts. But you really have to have patience and make sure everything is right before you get to the details, because details are just, like I said, window dressing. It's more important to have the underlying structure correct and the gesture and the pose look good. Okay, now I'm using a dental tool. This is a pointy spatula dentist tool, a tooth scraper. I've had this one for about 25 years. I got it in a flea market in Florida. And it's just a great tool. I'm just using it to blend the tufts of hair together and kind of refine them. And I'm using the edge, which is pretty sharp actually, to just sculpt in individual hairs. And I'm tying everything together now. You see the reference pinned up behind me on the board behind the sculpture. I printed out a bunch of pictures from the internet cool werewolves. That's a good shot of the tool. Now you can see I roughed in a tie in clay, but I'm going to get him up off that base and make a special base for him. So I'm going to take that clay tie off and I'm going to make a tie out of epoxy. Here's a piece of balsa wood I got at a craft store. I primed it. This is artwork that I made in Photoshop, and from this I can make this, which is a really cool reversed rubber stamp, and that's a nameplate. So I take some glazing putty I got at the auto parts store, and I just rubbed it into the wood, the balsa wood block, and took some fine sandpaper and kind of sanded it down just to get rid of the grain, the wood grain. So I want to take this guy off the base that I got him on and get him up onto a longer pipe so I can get underneath his beard there. And oh yeah, I'm gonna make a tie out of epoxy, the same two-part epoxy I used to make the teeth. I made a tie, and there's that longer pipe. I took him off the base, and I could hold that pipe and tilt him upwards and get to work in the little areas underneath the mustache and the beard. And the tie is removable now, and that's going to be easy for mold making. And when I make my castings, the tie is going to look like it's a separate part, like a real tie would look, and not just, you know, sculpted in relief up against the shirt. It's almost finished here. The hair is, you can see some big tufts there over the eyes. I refined the hair a little bit more than I planned on, but you can still see some big tufts in there. I like those big tufts of hair. So I'm going to briefly go over mold making, my method anyway. It's very simple, my method. Okay, I took these little glass beads that I got at the craft store, and I popped out the glass eyes and put these eyes in because it gave me a nice surface to mold. And I also removed the teeth, you could see, and left a nice little channel there, and they just snap right in there, the upper and lower teeth, and they will be molded separately. So I take some foam core and a T-square and an X-Acto blade, and I start to make little boxes, mold boxes. The tie is the only part that's going to have a two-part mold. I embed half of it in clay, like so, and I use wooden dowels and poke little registration keys into that clay, and this is going to be the first half of the mold. I pour the silicone over this. I make my box to make sure to seal all the cracks, and I pour silicone into that box, and that's the first half. Then I flip it over, peel away the clay, and pour the second half. This is my silicone. And there's the base. Just glue that down to a board, build a box around it using hot glue and foam core, and dump my rubber right on top. and that's an open face mold. And there you go. The impression is the silicone will pick up anything. I use mold for a mold release. I use just simple petroleum jelly, and I thin it with mineral spirits and brush it on. There's the first half, and there's the second half. The two parts came right apart. They didn't stick together. I'm using old silicone, old molds I cut up into chunks, squares, little cubes, and I'm going to dump those into the big mold to displace some of the silicone and save materials. It's expensive stuff, that silicone. But first I brush on a thin layer so it gets into all the hairs and the small nooks and crannies. Then I'll build my box around this using hot glue and clay. I'll throw those chunks in there, all those silicone chunks, I'll throw those in there and pour and top it off. The teeth are a very simple open face mold like the base was. And there are my molds, and I let that cure overnight. There's the teeth. Perfect impression of the originals. And there is my original inside the mold, and I'm going to cut that out using a utility knife. And when you hold that open, you can see the little chunks of silicone in there, and that saved me, about half a gallon of silicone. There's the dirty mold, what looks like inside, all the little clay bits stuck in there. And there's the original, which came out, a little banged up, but I'm going to melt that down and reuse it. There are my finished molds, and into those I'm going to pour a urethane resin. 2-part resin mixed 1:1, and it will give me a nice resin casting that you see here. I tinted it green just for the heck of it. It's really an off-white resin, but I put a little green tint in there. And there you go. There's the finished casting. I painted it with simple acrylic paints. The teeth are separate parts, and the tie is a separate part that I just glued on. And that's about it. I hope you enjoyed watching my process. And thank you again. Thanks for looking.
Alright, so there it is, and that is Tony Cipriano. Now his channel, he's got quite a lot of really neat videos on there. If you want to find him and check him out and subscribe or support him when he has projects, Cipriano Sculpture, all one word, is where you can find him. And let's click on the videos here. So he's got some portfolio videos, and also this. I believe we've watched some of these on our past shows where he shows his studio and talks about the business and how he got involved and all kinds of fun stuff. So definitely check him out, Tony Cipriano. And anyways, yeah. So Diego Elmao. Thanks for stopping in, and also Claymore and Hebert and all 7 viewers tonight. So next week, I'm not really sure what we'll talk about, but if you have ideas for next week, something that you'd like me to show, tell me ahead of time, at least a couple of days or so I can prepare. I know Hebert, you wanted me to show some of your films or your latest film, but there's no real time for that. So just make sure next week, give me some advance notice, and I'll see you guys all next week. So see you all later.